Enrichment, Enlightenment, Transformation. Rabbi Yisroel Cutler, the spiritual leader of Chabad of Cary, North Carolina, guides anyone who has been searching for a meaningful life and conscious living. Join our discussions about the mundane, our daily activities, and then infuse every day with a spiritual twist from the inspired sages of the Talmud and Jewish mysticism, which many call Kabbalah. We learn from the root source of all religious monotheistic traditions and delve into the symbolism and levels of meaning from biblical stories.
Thank you. We have a great crowd here. And I hear an echo, Amnon.
Keep going.
Okay. So thank you to everyone joining in live here at Cary, as well as the online community. It's been a few weeks since we had a session, so it's fantastic to be back and really looking forward towards our discussion today. If you are tuning in online, we'd love you to chat, let us know that you're listening, ask questions. That really makes us feel that we are studying Torah with everyone in the world. And Debbie, if you're listening in, please let us know your participation. Class isn't the same without you here, so we'd love to hear from you if you are listening in. Does everyone have a place? Okay. Give me one moment. I'm just going to... Sure. Give me 1 second. Hi. Hello?
You look so serious.
No, I'm just tired. I worked out yesterday for the first time in a whole month. I went to my daughter, so I take a spin class, and she goes running right back. I overdid it. I felt so good yesterday. I'm like, I only do like 11 miles, and yesterday was like 16.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, wow, I feel so great. And you know what? And like this morning, I was like,
could you pass one of those? You gotta rest now.
I can't believe it. I shouldn't have done it, right?
16 miles?
On the bike.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, that's not so. No, it's an hour and 15-minute class. So it's not.
I only took, when I was a competitive bicyclist, I took one swing class, not bejeebers. I don't like, wait a minute.
Okay, I apologize for the delay. Now we will get started. So there was a stampede of antelopes. Not elephants, antelopes. Stampede of antelopes going by. Running. And they did a test. They put up a red curtain. And lo and behold, what do you think they did? They stopped. They thought it was a wall. They thought it was something they would be unable to go through. So they stopped. And it's a very interesting metaphor for life that often for us as well, there are obstacles or limitations or things that are getting in our way, and they seem to be something that we have absolutely no ability to crush through. Well, in reality, the effort is there and the faith is there, we are able to go through. The problem is it's very hard to muster inside of us that realization and that perspective. So what we're going to do today is a class really on the first 3 parshas. This week's Torah portion, last week's, and the week before. Because we haven't had a lunch and learn for the last 3 weeks. So I wanted to sort of combine all of these weeks before. These are perhaps the most famous stories in the entire Torah, the stories of the Exodus. And throughout the Exodus story, especially at the beginning, there is that theme. There was a group of people that refused to believe that this is a wall. They wanted to look at it as a curtain. They wanted to believe we can keep on going. We just have to do that. And that's what we're going to read about today. By way of introduction, what is the second book of the Torah called in English? No, in English, what is the name of the second book of the Torah?
Deuteronomy.
Exodus. That's what it's called. It's called Exodus.
Second chapter.
No. What is the book of the Torah called? It is called the book of Exodus. And for good reason. It has inside of it the story of our Exodus. What is it called in Hebrew? Shemot. Wow. What does Shemot mean? Names. So no one calls it, though, the book of names. Who calls it the book of names? You do. It's a big difference. But no one calls it by its accurate name. It should be the book of names, right? Why is it called the book of names? Because the very first verse in the entire book of the Torah begins, and why don't you read the first text? Does everyone at least have a copy or want to share?
And these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt.
Okay, so we have the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt. How many children of Israel came to Egypt? 70. There were 70 people who originally made the journey down to Egypt. The 12 sons of Jacob, their families, 70 family units actually came down to Egypt, okay? The 70 became hundreds, which became thousands, which became tens of thousands, as the Jews multiplied exponentially in Egypt. But that is the first first verse of the book. These are the names of the children who came to Egypt. So what I'm going to suggest today is there's a good reason why the book of Exodus is really the book of names. Because who came down to Egypt? The
Jacob.
Names of the children of Israel. Let me say that again. Who came down into Egypt? Not the children of Israel. Who?
The name.
The names of the children of Israel. What is a name? It's important. It's part of me. It's very strongly associated with me. Mysticism says that my name is, especially a Hebrew name, is prophetic. It's related to my soul. But is it really the real me? If I lived on an island and no one was there except for me, would I need a name?
No.
So a name is a handle. A name is a way someone else has access to me. A name is something that is part of me, but it's not my essence. Take away your name, you would still be here, okay? So the question is, who went down into the slavery? The Israelites or their names?
Well, they went into slavery.
And I apologize, the speaker is coming tonight. I need to get this for one moment. I apologize. I'm sorry, everyone. Hello? Okay. I'll call him one moment. Okay. Sorry, everyone. There's a problem with the speaker who just came in. That's why you never have speakers come in at the same time you schedule a class, right? The person who was supposed to pick them up did not. Yeah, I'm going to tell him to Uber right now. I apologize, everyone, for the delay. One second. Give me a second. I can't.
Well, that's what, I like Debbie's chickens. I'm taking
Yeah.
care of Debbie's chickens, and I'm like,
Yeah.
can you go in there and clean the
You
poo
don't have
and
to
all
clean
of
it
that?
every day.
No, you don't have to clean it every day, is what I say. But
You just do it
Yeah,
on.
feeding them.
yeah, I mean, like if you had cows, wouldn't you let them out too?
And you milk them too.
Oh, right,
Because
you
it's
would
suffer.
have to milk them because they would be.
Well, you can put more feed in there on Friday. I just got rid of my chickens last summer and I didn't.
Yeah, so it's a
tend to them
complex.
every day.
It's complex. You are allowed to take care of your animals. There are certain laws about what you can and can't do, but you are allowed to take care of animals.
What about
And feed
clean
them.
poo?
Oh, right now we can't. Okay,
No, you can't.
let's go back to this. I apologize, everyone. Who came down to Egypt? The verse says the names of the children of Israel. Their essence was not. In other words, whenever someone is enslaved by a situation, the question is, what part of you are in that situation? What part of you are enslaved by it? Is it my essence? If it's my essence, it's going to be very hard to get out of it because I'm completely enslaved by it. If, however, I believe there is part of me, on my essential self, my soul, there is a part of me that is free and a more external component of me that is trapped, then I'm able to get out. I have the faith that I'm going to get out. I know that the people who is enslaving me is not enslaving my essence. They might have my physical, they might have my work, they may have my emotions, but they don't have my essence. As long as you can hold on to that, you can get out. It's that way with many obstacles. Whenever situations in life, have life throws you a curveball, what part of you are enslaved by that, and what part of you are outside of that? And we're going to develop that theme as the class goes further. So let's read famous verses. Barbara, why don't you read? A new king.
A new king arose over Egypt who did not know about Joseph. He said to his people, "Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more numerous and stronger than we are. Get ready, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they increase and a war befall us, and they join our enemies and depart from the land." So they appointed over them tax collectors to afflict them with their burdens, and they built store cities for Pharaoh, Pithom, and Ramses.
Notice it doesn't say they built the pyramids.
Oh, I know.
That's a myth, meaning a lot of times you'll hear people say, "Ooh, I don't believe the Jews built the pyramids." You're right, they didn't.
They didn't?
They didn't. No, there's no place.
But they
that-
built
You want to close the
cities.
door over there, just Marty, so people have privacy. So it says they built storage cities for Pharaoh, Pithom, and Ramses. Continue, Barbara.
But as much as they would afflict them, so did they multiply and gain strength. And they were disgusted because of the children of Israel.
In other words, the Egyptians were disgusted. They had a fear that the Jews were becoming too mighty and too numerous, and that the Jews would overthrow them. They tried to afflict them to keep the population down. It did not work. That's the text. Unfortunately, this has happened many times in history in many different ways.
Isn't it strange how they always try to kill us with taxes, though?
Oh, okay. They pointed over them. Here, though, the English is tax collectors, but it does mean supervisors. It means task masters.
Oh.
The same word is used for tax collectors, but it means really task masters. Okay. But many times throughout history, we had this fear, Okay. That's episode 1. So they get enslaved. Pharaoh, of course, makes numerous decrees against the Jews. He tries to kill the Jewish babies. He throws Jewish children into the Nile. Let's now do chapter 2. How?
A man of the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. The woman conceived and bore a son, and she saw him that he was good, and she hid him for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she took for a reed basket, smeared it with clay and pitch.
Smeared it. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm going to move actually because of battery. Keep on reading, Hal. I'm listening.
Placed the child in and put it in the marsh at the Nile's edge. His sister stood from afar to know what would be done to him. Pharaoh's
have to move
daughter
here
went down to
battery.
to the Nile, and a maidens were walking along the Nile. And she saw the basket in the midst of the marsh, and she sent her maidens, and she took it.
Okay.
Do we have a date to this?
We have a year date, meaning that we don't know what date, I don't know what date this story happened. We have a year. The Jewish calendar, 2448. So that is 3,300 years ago. Okay, just bring my check.
Thank you. Is that why they say the Sea of Reeds on the prayer books instead of the Red Sea?
No, this is the Nile River. This
Yeah,
was
that's
different.
right. So what-
This is not near the Red Sea. This is the Nile River where Moshe was placed down. But Moshe was placed by reeds, different than the Reed Sea. None, can I still be heard?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Just moved because of a battery connection. Okay. I want to revisit this story right now, looking at the way the Medrash reads 2 parts of this. Number 1, the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And let me start with the question. If you lived in those times and you were enslaved and there were hundreds of years, would you want to bring children into the world?
No.
Yes. You have to have a future. You have to have hope.
What are you bringing children into the world?
Well, look how awful this world is. But you know what? Every child is.
Is this world? There's a lot of beautiful things about this world, and there's a lot of problems in this world. I don't want to just believe. I hear often how horrible the world. There's a lot of evil in the world today. Don't get me wrong. We are also fortunate to live in a time that we have more blessings than many other times in history. Agreed?
We hope
Yeah?
so.
I want to.
Scary, though. It's scary now.
I know there's a lot to be afraid of. I'm not dismissing that. But I think sometimes we're too quick to dismiss the incredible blessings and opportunities that we have in the world today. And Marty, you were going to say?
Well, I was going to say that the women are the heroes of the story, as they are in many of the stories, because they realized that the future of Judaism, like you, was dependent on them keeping the spirits of the men up and things like that. So they're the ones that.
And that's what the Midrash says. And that's what the Midrash says. The Midrash writes that the men did not want to have children. The women had to convince them. The women had to entice them. And the Midrash writes as follows. Who was reading? You want to read?
Said Rabbi Akiva, in the merit of the righteous women of that generation were the Israelites, delivered from Egypt. At first Pharaoh ordered that they make the prescribed number of bricks each day. Then he commanded that they should not be allowed to sleep in their homes, so that they should not be able to have children. The taskmaster said to them, if you go home to sleep, you will lose a few hours from your work, and you will never complete the allotted number. Shall I go on?
Keep on reading.
So they made them sleep on the ground by the field. What did the daughters of Israel do? They would go down to draw water from the river, and God would send them a small fish into pitchers. They then set 2 pots on the fire, one for hot water and the other for the fish. They sold the fish and bought wine, which they carried to their husbands in the field, and washed, anointed, fed, gave them to drink.
I put a ... there. It goes a little bit longer, and then right out.
It's supposed to
They entice them afterwards. And actually, they would bring mirrors with them and put on makeup and try to look beautiful and entice their husbands. And yes, right then outside in the field, keep on reading, that is when that intimacy together.
Among the sheepfolds, as it is written, when ye lie among the sheepfold.
Correct. And believe it or not, these same mirrors come back later in the Torah because the Jews donate these mirrors. The women donate these mirrors for the Mishkan, for the tabernacle. And Moshe at the beginning said these were used for vain purposes, and God says not at all. These were used for the most amazing purposes. So, yeah.
I think now men try to get women into this condition.
Right, here it's exactly. But here it was, physically the men were not interested. The men did not want to go further. They did not want to bring children into the world. And the women had that extra strength inside of them to keep going, to keep believing that this is a temporary condition, to believe that we will go free because deep down there's a place inside of us right now that is free. So that is episode 1. Now let's go to the second text we read about the man from Levi who married a daughter of Levi. Do you mind reading, please?
Yeah. A man in the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi, Talmud 12.
It's odd. It's very odd. It should have just said 2 people got married. It says a man from the house of Levi went and married. Where did he go to? Keep on reading what the Midrash writes on that, the Talmud.
Where did he go? He went in the counsel of his daughter, Moses' father, Amram.
It should be a period after daughter.
Oh, okay.
My fault,
good.
yeah.
Okay. Moses' father, Amram, was the greatest man of his generation. When he saw that the wicked Pharaoh had decreed, every son that is born you shall cast into the river, he said, in vain do we labor. He divorced his wife. All the Israelites thereupon arose and divorced their wives. Said his daughter to him, Father, your decree is more severe than Pharaoh's. Pharaoh decreed only against the males. You have decreed against the males and females. Pharaoh only decreed concerning this world. You have decreed concerning this world and the world to come. In the case of the wicked Pharaoh, there is a doubt whether his decree will be fulfilled or not. In your case, it will certainly be fulfilled. So Amram went and remarried his wife, and they all arose and took back their wives.
So Moses' older sister, and Miriam is the oldest of the 3, Miriam, then Aaron, then Moshe, convinces his father to remarry his mother. Talk about chutzpah. She's a little girl. And she says, you're worse than Pharaoh. What does Miriam mean in Hebrew? Bitter. Maror.
Right now, let me get.
Miriam, no, this is not in the text. Miriam means bitter. Who would therefore name their daughter Miriam? Bitter.
Very
So what's
characteristic
the
of time.
idea? She was bitter about the situation. She didn't accept the situation. She was frustrated and wanted to do something about it, okay? Better yet, the first Passover, first Seder the Jews ever had was where? In prison, actually. Where was, not prison, but where was the first time the Jews had a Passover Seder? Well, the first Seder, right? But right the day before they left Egypt. They were told to take the lamb. They had it in Egypt while they were still technically slaves, okay? And at that time, they were told to take the Paschal lamb, and they were told to eat matzah, and they were also told to eat maror. God Almighty, why do they have to eat maror? I understand why today, 3,200 and whatever years later, we need to eat maror in order that we should remember the bitterness. They don't need to remember the bitterness. They have experienced the bitterness. Why are they eating maror? But maror has a good connotation as well. When someone is frustrated about a situation and is bitter about it and wants to do something about it, that's mar. Miriam had that mentality. And interestingly enough, and I've explained this in other classes, even in Hebrew, there's two words for being sad or down about something. One is sad atzav. It means depressed or down. And one is mar, bitter. And there's a difference. Atzvut is a state of depression, a state where you feel paralyzed. It leads to inaction. It leads to nothingness. It leads to being crushed. Maror is I'm frustrated and bitter. I don't accept the current situation. I want to do something about it. That's maror. So here we have Miriam, which means bitter. She was the one that was bitter about the exile, didn't agree with the slavery, and had the chutzpah to tell her parents to get married, which thus inspired the birth of Moshe, as well as other Jews at the time. So those are two stories, okay? Third story. You want to read version?
Oh,
Another example of going forward when all seems impossible.
I can't see even
Okay,
one.
sure.
My
So
glasses
another
don't
example
work.
of going forward when all seems impossible. Now the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one who was named Shiphrah and the second who was named Puah, and he said, when you deliver the Hebrew women and you see on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall put him to death. But if it is a daughter, she may live. The midwives, however, feared God, so they did not do as the king of Egypt had spoken to them, but they enabled the boys to live.
So they defied orders, and we don't, just think about what that meant. They knew very well that their own lives could be at risk. Who were these midwives? There is one midrash that writes that they were actually the same Miriam. It's interesting, the verse says the Hebrew midwives. So some say it means the Hebrew midwives. Some say it means the midwives of the Hebrews. See the difference?
Right, they could have.
They might have been Egyptian. According to the second reading, they might have actually been Egyptian.
Mhm.
So there are different ways to read that, but here too, we have a situation where they defied orders. Instead of coming to terms, I know I'm in a corner
But
here.
how-
Instead of coming, this is reality. What can we do about it? It's not our fault. We don't want, no, this is wrong. I'm not going to take part. Yeah.
No, well, how could there be Egyptian midwives? I mean, these were slaves. They were outcasts. They were not mixing with Egyptians. They had to be Hebrew.
Right. You're saying, why would you have, as a profession, the Egyptians taking care of?
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Okay. That's,
Just
yeah.
saying. I just.
unless a profession is a profession.
Because they're looking for the first one, they're looking for the first one from Pharaoh.
Right, but this would seem to imply that even before the decree was taking place, the Egyptian midwives serviced the Jews, and you're saying you find that odd, which I understand.
Well, that could be, there's no reason why they couldn't both be.
Yeah, I just, when I said the verse, I wanted to bring both possible possibilities.
Yeah.
Okay. But another example of, again, women being the ones inspired to defy orders, not come to terms with the situation. And of course, this has happened throughout many times in history, again, defying orders. Next story, also a woman. Who's the one that rescues Moshe from the river? It's the daughter of Paro. And we don't realize what that means. Substitute daughter of Paro with daughter of Hitler, right? She also, again, I don't know if she risked her life. Maybe she did. This was not something that was easy. She knew quite well who this was. But she said, I'm going to save a life. Keep on reading, Pam.
She saw the basket in the midst of the march, and she sent her maidservant Amata, and she took it.
So in Hebrew, she sent her Amata to take the basket. What is an Amma in Hebrew? So it could be female servant. What else is an Amma in Hebrew? It is. And in fact, in measurements throughout the Talmud, when you want to say how long something is, the English is always cubic, right? What is it? It's from here to here. That's an amma. So throughout Jewish halacha, a sukkah cannot be any bigger than 10 amot. This can't. Amma is a measurement in Hebrew and it means arm. So there's two ways of reading this verse. Either she sent her maidservant to get the basket, or she sent her arm to get the basket. What does it mean she sent her arm? Usually you don't have to send your arm. It's
an extension.
So the Midrash writes, keep on reading.
Another interpretation of this verse renders the Hebrew word amata as her arm rather than her maid. Amata also means arm lengths. This is to teach us that her arm was extended for many arm lengths to enable her to reach the basket.
So she had a little extension. The Midrash writes it was actually beyond her reach. Now, the idea here is not so much the literal explanation, but the message here. What is the message? It was too far into the river for her to reach. So there's two options. One is, all right, I can't do anything about it. And two is, I'm going to try. And what happens when you sometimes put in your little effort? That's when Hashem assists you. That's when God assists you. When you sit back and you come to terms with the situation, you say, I can't do anything about it. That's failure. It's no. I need to do my part. But it's too much. I can't do it. Do your part. Look what the Kotzker Rebbe writes on that Midrash. Pam, continue reading.
Rabbi Menachem Mendel of
Kotzk, who was a Hasidic Rebbe in Poland.
Yeah. Moses' basket lay beyond her reach. Why did Pharaoh's daughter extend her arm? Often we are confused with a situation that is beyond our capacity to rectify. By all natural criteria, the matter is simply beyond our reach. But Pharaoh's daughter heard a child's cry and extended her arm. An unabridgeable distance lay between her and the basket containing the weeping infant, making her action seem utterly pointless. But because she did the maximum of which she was capable, she achieved the impossible. Because she extended her arm, God extended its reach, enable her to say.
So it's a beautiful lesson in life. When a situation seems out of our hands, we need to extend ourselves. We need to say, look, I can't do it all, but I need to do whatever I can. And it is when we extend our arm, the Kotzker Rebbe says, that is when Hashem will extend our arm further. But when we give up, when we come to terms with the situation. And what I find fascinating in all four of these stories, it's women. All four. Right? We had
four.
Miriam,
But before that,
the women in general. We have, the daughter of Paro. So, so how do you get out of slavery when you believe it's wrong, when you believe that better times are going to come, you don't come to terms with the situation, and when you feel completely paralyzed, you say, I'm going to do what I can. And at that point, I'm going to give it over to God to do the rest. But I need to do what I can and not sit with folded arms saying that, there's nothing we can do. It's hard to do that. Yeah.
Excuse me. No one heard Netanyahu's speech at this table. That upsets me. Because here he is, the president of Israel, and people are very disturbed about his position and have been attacking him, and he's been resisting. And I'm just wondering, as I consider myself a Reformed Jew. Now,
A Jew is a Jew.
excuse me, dear.
A Jew is a Jew.
Yeah, but I'm just concerned because here is this man who is a very well versed in religion, and in his stance is I don't know I don't know how all of you feel about this situation. I'm reluctant to accuse him, but at the same time, I feel that we have got to be accommodating.
So I'm going to keep the politics out of this class right now because we could have it's a fascinating discussion we can have.
It's terribly important that we become as informed as we can about this whole world, and of course this whole midrash is we can apply to today.
Yeah. But I want to leave.
Women are so protective of birth, and men in this midrash were felt that they wanted to divorce themselves, separate themselves, and how do we handle this?
So, and the political part of it, I'm going to leave out of this particular class, just because that's Torah brings us together, and politics. I'm sure once we started doing that, we'd have many different opinions all around the table. And
I wish more people had watched this program.
Is that Frontline you're talking about?
Excuse me?
Frontline.
Did you watch it? Oh, good for you. I think it's just important.
So after class, I would love to share one-on-one. We can discuss this together. No, but as you know, Torah brings us together, and then once we go into any of these particular issues, I'm sure we'll have many different opinions around the room. Yeah.
Maybe we've got an interesting about Batya. Is it Batya?
Batya, the daughter of Har. Yeah.
Are there any interesting about how she relates to her father? She has to sort of hide this baby who's circumcised, presumably, or maybe he's not circumcised. We don't know.
And at what point in the story does Paro recognize, who Moshe is? Was it only after he struck the Egyptian and had to flee? Was it at an earlier point? The famous story in the Medrash is the famous story is when he takes Paro's crown, right? You know that Medrash or not? There's a story where once he takes Paro's crown, and at that point Paro gets very, very nervous about him and looks at that as a very bad omen, that he takes Paro's crown and he puts it on his head as a toddler.
There's also the issue of Miriam getting Batya to agree to have
Correct.
the mother be the
Correct.
person.
Correct. So was Paro aware of that arrangement? That's really the question. Was Paro aware of the arrangement that this baby was always brought home to be nursed? I don't know.
But
I don't know.
couldn't you
I don't know.
imagine that maybe just knowing women, the sheer desire for the baby would have been so great. I'm willing to bet it's a choice of her happiness.
But nonetheless, I mean, we
So
still
I
have to
think
give
you
her
have
an
to do
incredible
that.
amount of credit
Yeah.
for doing what she did, because again, it could have meant risking her life. In those days, even if you were the daughter of Paro, that did not mean you were safe from Dad's decree, unfortunately. Yes.
You had said that there was a possibility that God was going to help the Pharaoh's daughter to reach the baby. My question is, would that be that God would help her for Moses, or to help her for her? And I guess the second part is, since the Egyptians didn't believe in a Hebrew God, would the Hebrew God believe and help an Egyptian?
Interestingly enough, the same Midrash writes, why was she going to the river that day? She was fed up with the Egyptian gods, and that was her version of
A conversion.
dunking in like a mikvah. So the same Midrash says she wanted to cleanse herself from the Egyptian idols.
Oh.
So she was already showing signs of disengaging, in a sense, from the Egyptians. But the answer is both. It was to help someone trying to do the right thing, and it was to save Moshe. And God is not just the God of the Jews, but the God of the entire world. And everyone is God's children. So I think both. With
So
the-
people don't have to believe in him for him to believe in them.
No, I mean, no, I mean, God. Everyone is God's children. Of course.
He's also the God of history.
Correct. Correct.
And,
God
doesn't it
orchestrates.
say that when Moshiach comes, the proselytes are going to resurrect with the righteous
But it's not
Jews?
just people who convert to Judaism, but it also is people who
Oh.
live ethical and godly
Right.
lives, not being Jews,
Right, not
which is
observing the seven normal
correct,
laws.
correct. So this is the story of a handful of people who throughout the worst of times, two things, they believed one day they would leave, and they refused to just listen to orders. And the two go together. How about the Jewish people as a whole? When Moshe does tell them the news about the fact they're going to leave Egypt, what is their initial reaction?
Yeah, right.
Their initial reaction, they do believe.
Okay.
And at the end of Parsha of Shemot, Moshe tells them the news, and it says, "Vayamin, vayima'en ha'am." The people had emunah. The people believed. What happened following that? Well, Moshe went to Paro for the first time. He gave his little spiel. He gave his little address. Paro said, "Absolutely not. The people are lazy. Not only are you not going free, but I'm going to stamp down and make conditions worse. You still have to produce the same number of bricks, but I'm not going to give you the straw to produce it anymore. You have to gather the straw yourself and still keep the same quota." And the slavery got worse overnight. And then the next time Moshe told the people that he was going to redeem them, the verse says as follows. Why don't you read, please, Bill?
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to hold on to Moshe told to the children of Israel, but they did not listen to Moshe because their spirit was broken because of the hardness of the word.
So now we fast forward a little bit. It says, Velo Shamu Moshe. It got to a point where they couldn't. They couldn't listen to Moshe because their spirit was broken in the hardness of their work. That's one of the saddest verses, I think, in the Torah, in the sense that they were not even open to a reality outside of them. And we hear from people, whether they're survivors in the Holocaust or in any horrible situation, could you imagine a day? We can't even imagine for a survivor, someone in Auschwitz, could they even dream of a day one day they would be free? Could they imagine a day where one day they would be living a normal life while you're going through hell? What do you think?
They had to have hope. That's what kept them alive.
How?
I mean, somewhere in you, I think you have a well of strength if you can
Well,
reach
if we can reach it. If we can reach it. But sometimes the situation can get so bad, as this verse says, they could no longer believe. And even in the Holocaust, you had people that on certain days were the ones giving hope to everyone else. And then on another day, they themselves needed to be held back from jumping into the electric fence or something like that. Anyone on the online community?
Nope. I mean, they're listening, but there are
No comments yet. Okay. So I believe every person has inside of us the capacity, whether it's an illness, whether it's, God forbid, abuse, any of the horrible prisons we can experience in life, there is part of us that is free from that. There's a place in our soul that is untainted by no matter what experience happens to us. The question is, are we able to access it? Sometimes we need the help of someone else. Now, the job of the other person is not to get us out, but really to help us discover the place inside of us that has the ability to get out. Okay? And I think this explains to us something very, very interesting about the birth of Moshe, the birth of Moses. Okay? In America, there's a law that if you want to be a president, actually this is being discussed right now, right? Do you have to be born in the country, or is it enough that your parents are?
That's going to be interesting.
I don't think it's, in any event, what's the reason for that law?
So you'll have more loyalty to the country that you were born in or were a citizen of.
Is that, yeah? So it's a loyalty. Yeah. And anyone else share what is the reason? Sometimes an immigrant might have even more appreciation for the situation than someone else.
It's like taking let's do a Frenchman, okay? And he just up and decides one day, I want to be president of the United States.
But maybe he's more loyal than the American is. That could be. But,
Maybe.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking of the values, the principles, the ideas that we hopefully have instilled in them when they were growing up.
right. So it wasn't something that happened later on, but they were brought up from the cradle with these ideas, with these values. And there's something about if you're going to be the leader, you're going to be representing people, you should have a similar background. You should have a similar set of circumstances in your life. Not to say that unique circumstances don't help. Sometimes the unique circumstances help, but if you're going to be president, you should have grown up with the same stories and the same tradition. I guess that, and that helps with loyalty as well. Yeah, were you?
Yeah, I think the original purpose was to exclude British from.
Exclude British.
Divided
Interesting. So there might be a very practical reason. So I say this by way of introduction. Is it not interesting that the leader of the Jewish people, the person who took them out of slavery, the person who was the communicator of Torah, never spent one day as a slave? Ever think about that? That seems to go again, right? Correct. He, even if not for he's true. Even if not for the fact that he grew up in Pharaoh's house, even had he survived as a baby, he grew up as one of the Levites. The Levites were not slaves. True. But what I'm asking is, would the Jews not respect, wouldn't it make more sense that someone who was a slave then became the leader because they were amongst the people? And again, we can only speculate, but it is an odd, very, very odd story. Moshe's upbringing is very odd. So odd that Sigmund Freud's last book, which is called Moses and Monotheism, right? He writes the story is so odd because generally what happens in all the storybooks that you grew up as a child is one day there's a slave and the slave finds out you're not really a slave, you're really a prince, you're really royalty. He says here it's the other way around. It's a prince who grows up and he finds out one day you're not really a prince, you're really the children of a slave people. So he writes the whole story is bizarre. And what? Oh, so why would Hashem have orchestrated event? Look, who are we to know why God? You said he's the author of history, but why would Hashem have authored things in such a way where Moshe Rabbeinu did not have this experience?
There's a saying in Portuguese that goes that if the saint, the homegrown or the house saint doesn't perform miracles.
Okay.
It's a
Do you know where that comes from?
Translation.
There's a Hebrew expression, Ein Navi Be'iro. That's so interesting.
Is that right?
Yes.
I don't know
What does Ein Navi Be'iro mean? There's no prophet in his own town.
Right. That's what it is.
That is what the Hebrew expression is. So that is where, okay. So the Ibn Ezra, who was a medieval, one of our greatest gave commentary on the Torah. There's three reasons. Why would it be that Moshe had such a puzzling upbringing? Okay. Number one, he begins. Oh, you were gonna offer a comment? I thought, no, please share, bro. So we're, what do you want to read all the way, Elizabeth? All the way, Elizabeth. Yeah. Yeah.
A little louder, if you please.
Yeah.
I might hear it. God's thoughts are deep and mysterious. Who can grasp his secret? Only he comprehends his scheme.
So he starts off saying, who knows? Who are we to even begin to wonder why Hashem orchestrated things in such a way? But if you want to hear my spin on it, number one.
It says number two.
It should be, yeah.
If we grew up amongst them and was known from a young age, they would not have proper reverence for him and treat him like a regular person.
Moshe Rabbeinu, you were such a cute baby. I remember when I changed your diapers. You know how it is. There's a certain like familiarity. There's a certain mystique he has when he just emerges on the scene, right? So he says, number one is people would not give him the proper respect. And when they say, hey, we went to grade school together and okay. But this is not, that's one answer. But I want to focus on the second answer because it's very, very powerful. Yeah.
Perhaps God caused Moses to grow up in the home of royalty so that his soul would be accustomed to a higher sense of learning and behavior, and he would not feel lowly and accustomed to a house of slavery. We see that he killed
What a brilliant insight. What he writes is Moshe grew up as a prince, okay? His image was not clouded by being a slave. He never came to terms with injustice. So the first day he sees this Egyptian beating a Jew to death, one of the earliest stories we have about Moshe, he intervenes. A little bit later, he sees another injustice happening with Midianite girls being abused by a well, and he intervenes there as well. If someone grew up as a slave, guess what? They're used to seeing injustice. But Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't that way. So might it be, the Ibn Ezra writes, that is the reason why he grew up as a prince, someone who always had the dignity of self as well as the dignity for every person, a prince in the good sense, not in an egotistical sense. So it took a Moshe Rabbeinu to inspire in the rest of the Jews that inner freedom, that inner sense of, I am a prince of God. And we have to, maybe the women didn't need it as much, but certainly the men did. And just
Rabbeinu means after Moshe.
our Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe our Rebbe. And just to conclude with a nice, this is a modern writer, Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson, but he writes as follows. He just, you want to go back around, Anne?
The curse of the Egyptian exile consisted not only of the physical slave labor and the horrible oppression of the Hebrews, it also inculcated within many of the Hebrews an exile-like mentality. The abuse was so profound that many of them learned to see their misery as their exclusive and inherent reality, and to accept their lives as such. They became accustomed to the darkness and ceased to sense the extraordinary degradation of their situation. The hard work was not only a physical impediment, it also created a slave mentality within many of the Hebrews, robbing them of the ability to foresee a new vision for their lives.
Yeah, keep on reading.
This is why the Redeemer of Israel needed to grow up in the Egyptian palace, not among his own people. Had Moses grown up among the Hebrew slaves, he too would have suffered from a slave mentality, lacking the courage to fight injustice and devoid of the ability to mold an enslaved tribe into a great people, with a vision of transforming the world into a place worthy of the divine presence. He would not find within himself the strength to dream of liberty and to confront the greatest tyrant of the time with the message of a living God desiring the commitment of free human beings. Only because he grew up in royal ambience, free of physical and psychological shackles, did Moses have a clear sense of the horrific injustice and feel the need to fight it. Unfortunately, many human beings, after being subjected to dysfunctional conditions for a time, learn to somehow tolerate it and accept it as the innate condition of their life.
Yeah.
This can be worse than the condition itself, since it guarantees no way out. We must cultivate in ourselves and in our loved ones the feeling of royalty. The greatest tragedy, said Rabbi Aaron of Carlin, is when the prince believes he is a peasant, when you settle for less because you think you are destined to slavery. You don't see yourself as a prince, as a child of God, and hence lack that feeling that you can rewrite your future and achieve your ultimate potential.
All right, so that's the take home.
Absolutely beautiful.
That's really the take home here. The way we look at ourselves is so powerful, and the ability to get out of our own. Each one of us has those things that imprison us in some sense. And in those times where we find it too difficult to do ourselves, we need someone perhaps outside, not to free us, but to show us inside of us how we can do it. And often learning Torah as well helps give us that fresh perspective that allows us to tackle our issues with that sense of freedom.
Can I
We'll
ask
hold
that?
it. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, evidently, obviously, they did not have the Torah to study
Correct.
to keep them. How did they maintain this faith? Because then it wasn't well defined. It was just, well, we believe in one God. How did they become a people? Is what I want to know. It seems like they didn't become Hebrews until Moses.
They were called a nation. But it really was not until they got the Torah. You're absolutely right that there was something that strongly connected them. Even before they got the Torah, they had family traditions. Okay, it wasn't written up. It wasn't in that formal state, they did have family traditions and spiritual teachings that they held on to. But yeah, it wasn't that strong. And to a good point, they did assimilate. And many did lose faith, understandably so. Yeah.
I think of what is normally called the oral tradition.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
the
they
stories
had,
that were
correct.
told.
Any other thoughts around the room here?
I want to say something. It's when the prince believes that he's a peasant. Isn't that related to us trying to become more and more assimilated into our culture, and forgetting that we are actually, you know, the princes and
Correct.
princesses?
Absolutely. Because we feel, you know, we feel low about ourselves, right? And when we have that courage, we feel there's nothing to be ashamed of in our Judaism or in our faith. Very much so. It is very hard. And because when you have a tide that's swinging the other, you know, one way. Correct. And by the way, it doesn't mean royalty in a egotistical sense. That's not what it means. On the contrary, someone that's truly royal wants everyone else to feel equally royal. That's what we're talking about over here. All right, we'll hold it here. Thank you everyone for joining us from the online community. Feel free to email us if you have any questions about the classes. God willing, we will be back same time, same place next week. And thank you to Nissan Communications for hosting today's class. Have a great week.
You're tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.